For nearly 30 years, there was no body. No crime scene, no confession, just one missing college student. And a name investigators could never, ever let go. Tonight, we're unraveling one of America's most frustrating and haunting cold cases. The disappearance and murder of Kristin Smart. A case that lingered for decades, fueled by suspicion, silence, and so many unanswered questions. Until science, persistence, and time finally caught up. By the end of this story, you will see why justice took nearly 30 years and why many believe it almost never came at all. It was May 25, 1996. Kristin Smart was a vibrant 19-year-old freshman at California Polytechnic State University, known as Cal Poly. She had a bright smile, a love for adventure, and her whole life ahead of her. That Friday night, she attended a small off-campus party near her dorm. Like many college students, she was just having a good time. But as the night wore on, witnesses later said she appeared intoxicated and was having trouble walking on her own. Around 2 a.m., 3 other students offered to walk her back to her dorm. The walk wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes. But somewhere along that short path, something went terribly wrong. Of the 3 students who started the walk with her, just to return to their own dorms, Kristin never did. By morning, she was gone. Friends noticed her absence. They called her room, but there was no answer. They checked with other students, but no one had seen her. Her disappearance was reported to the campus police, but initially it wasn't treated as a high-priority crime. It was Memorial Day weekend, and police thought maybe she had gone on an unannounced trip. But her parents knew better. Kristin was responsible. She would have called. As the days ticked by, the urgency grew. Her wallet, keys, and ID were all left in her room. There were no signs of a struggle. No emergency calls were made. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Within days, her disappearance made national news. Her face was everywhere on flyers, on television screens. The search began. Volunteers scoured the campus and surrounding areas. Helicopters with thermal imaging flew overhead. Search dogs were brought in, but despite all the efforts, there was one major, crippling problem. There was no physical evidence of a crime. No blood, no weapon, no crime scene. All investigators had was a missing person and a growing cloud of suspicion. Early in the investigation, police focused their attention on one of the students who walked with Kristin that night. His name was Paul Flowries. He was the last person seen with her. His dorm was on the way to hers, and the other 2 students had peeled off earlier, leaving Paul and Kristin to walk the final stretch alone. When questioned, Paul Flowries told police that he helped her part of the way home. Then he went to his dorm and she continued on her own. But his story seemed to shift with each telling. He was evasive. He had scratches on his face and a black eye, which he claimed he got playing basketball, but no one could confirm that. His roommate noticed his odd behavior. Investigators were highly suspicious, but suspicion isn't proof. Search warrants were executed for his dorm room. Cadaver dogs alerted near his mattress, a strong indicator that human remains had been there. But a full search of the room turned up nothing concrete. No DNA, no fibers, nothing that directly tied him to Kristin's disappearance. And so, year after year, nothing stuck. No body meant no crime scene. No crime scene meant no forensic evidence. No evidence meant no arrest and no charges. The case slowly, painfully, went cold, but it never went quiet. Kristin's parents, Denise and Stan Smart, became relentless advocates for their daughter. They kept her story in the news, held vigils, and put up a billboard with her picture that stayed up for years, a constant reminder to the community. Journalists like Chris Lambert, who later created the Your Own Backyard podcast, never stopped asking questions. And law enforcement, despite the lack of evidence, never stopped watching Paul Flowries. For decades, Paul Flores lived his life as a free man. He moved away from San Luis Obispo. He changed jobs frequently. He tried to blend in and avoid attention, but the rumors and the suspicion followed him everywhere he went. He was a man living under a permanent shadow. Over the years, search warrants would occasionally be served at his various residences or those of his family members. Investigators used ground-penetrating radar on his mother's property. They brought in more cadaver dogs, who repeatedly alerted near the property of his father, Ruben Flores. It seemed like they were always just on the verge of a breakthrough, but each time, they came up empty. No remains were ever recovered. The unofficial rule in prosecution at the time was no body, no case. Prosecutors believed that without Kristin's remains, convincing a jury of murder beyond a reasonable doubt would be nearly impossible. A defense attorney could simply argue that she might have run away or met with an accident elsewhere. The lack of a body created too much doubt, and so the long, agonizing silence continued. For Kristin's family, it was a special kind of torment, knowing who was likely responsible but being powerless to see justice done. The system had failed them. It seemed like it would continue to fail them forever until technology caught up. In 2020, a new generation of investigators decided to take a fresh look at the case. Armed with advanced forensic tools and a renewed determination, they focused their attention back on the Flores family properties. They returned to the home of Paul Flores' father, Ruben, in Arroyo Grande. This time, they zeroed in on the area beneath his back deck. They excavated the soil under the deck and found a significant area of disturbance. The soil showed signs that a large hole, roughly the size of a casket, had been dug there decades earlier and then filled back in. They took samples of this soil for analysis, using highly sensitive forensic techniques that didn't exist in 1996. Scientists made a groundbreaking discovery. They found the presence of human blood in the soil, and through further analysis, they were able to determine that it was consistent with Kristin Smart's DNA. It wasn't a body. But after 25 years, it was finally the physical evidence they so desperately needed. It was the link. In April of 2021, nearly a quarter of a century after Kristin Smart disappeared, the dam finally broke. Paul Flores was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. His father, Ruben Flores, was also arrested and charged as an accessory after the fact, accused of helping his son hide Kristin's body. For the first time, the case was moving forward. After decades of waiting, the Smart family was finally going to get their day in court. The trial was one of the most anticipated in California history. It was tense from the very beginning. The defense's strategy was simple and direct. No body means no murder. They argued that without remains, the prosecution couldn't prove Kristin was even dead, let alone that Paul Flores had killed her. They tried to paint her as a risk-taker who might have left on her own. But the prosecution built a powerful case based on circumstantial evidence. They argued, absence of a body doesn't erase a crime. They presented a mountain of evidence collected over 26 years. The jury heard testimony about Paul Flores' constantly changing stories. They heard from witnesses who saw the scratches on his face. They heard from the dog handlers whose cadaver dogs had alerted at his dorm and his father's property. And most powerfully, they heard about the forensic evidence found in the soil under Ruben Flores' deck. The prosecution's narrative was clear. Paul Flores took an intoxicated Kristin Smart to his room, attempted to assault her, and killed her in the process. Then, his father helped him bury her body under the deck, only to move it years later when law enforcement started closing in. After weeks of testimony and days of deliberation, in October 2022, the verdict finally came in. In a rare move, there were two separate juries, one for Paul and one for Ruben. The verdicts were read back to back. Paul Flores was found guilty of first-degree murder. After nearly 30 years, one of the biggest questions was finally answered. But just moments later, Ruben Flores's verdict was read, not guilty. Justice had arrived, but it was complicated. The man who killed Kristin was convicted, but the man accused of hiding her body was acquitted. And for the Smart family, the most painful question of all remained unanswered. Where is Kristin? To this day, Kristin Smart's body has never been found. Paul Flores was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. At his sentencing, Kristin's mother, Denise, spoke directly to him, calling him a cancer to society. Justice, many said, had finally been served, but it came so late. The Smart family received a verdict, but they never got true closure. They have no remains to bring home, no final place to say goodbye. This case has left a lasting legacy. It changed how cold cases are prosecuted in America, proving that a no-body murder case can be won with enough circumstantial evidence and modern science. It's a testament to the fact that persistence matters, that science is always evolving, and that even after decades, silence doesn't always win. The memory of Kristin Smart lives on, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of a family's unending love and a community's refusal to forget. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you believe justice can truly exist without a body? Should cases like this be tried earlier, even with less evidence, or was waiting for technology to advance the right call? And do you think someone else out there still knows where Kristin Smart is buried? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching. For more true crime stories, long-forgotten cases, and investigations that refuse to stay buried, make sure to subscribe to Crazy Crime Diary. We'll see you next time.